Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio. So today, we're going to be looking at a Japanese deck. And look, I get accused of clickbait way too often. I would just refer you to like a million other YouTube channels. And I tend to be overly enthusiastic. But when I say Japan is going crazy over this deck, that is word which came from my contacts in Japan as actually being they are going crazy over this deck. And when I call it crazy, ridiculous, unique, broken, whatever I call it, that's not me going over the top and trying to hook you in. I am going to show you a crazy, unique, over-the-top, ridiculous, broken Japanese deck that I am willing to bet is like no deck you've ever seen before. Because it's not like one I've ever seen before. It's ridiculous. Let's go down the list, shall we, in terms of ways it is different from almost any other deck. 4 different Stage 2 lines. Yeah, that's weird. 1 energy as a deck that attacks. A single energy deck that actually attacks. A deck where the only draw card is Looker. Have I hooked your attention yet? Because I should have. It all revolves around GRENINJA-GX, and this is going to take a few minutes to explain. So GRENINJA-GX is really your main attacker here. Now, GRENINJA-GX is all well and good. It's got a lovely ability whereby when you evolve it up, your opponent takes 3 damage counters on a Pokemon of your choosing. You get to drop 3 damage counters. Now, traditionally, this would be played with Frogadier, and Frogadier puts 2 damage counters when you evolve up, and you swarm and all of that. Here, the extra damage is a bonus, because what you're doing every turn is attacking with Haze Slash, 110 damage. You may shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. And you do. Every turn. How do you get a Greninja ready to go? It's a Stage 2 that attacks for free energy. How do you do that in 1 turn? Well, there's 2 cards you need. The first one is Super Boost Energy. Super Boost Energy provides 4 energy of any description when attached to a Stage 2, just so long as you have 2 other Stage 2s in play. Okay, cool. But how do you get the Greninja going in 1 turn? Meganium. Now, I told you that somebody would make a ridiculous combo with Meganium, and it looks like they have. You see, Meganium's ability basically says you can just evolve one of your basic Pokemon into a Stage 2 from your hand. You do not need to use Rare Candy. You do not need to wait a turn to evolve like you usually would. It is, as long as Meganium's out, you just play down your Froakie and immediately evolve into Greninja. And that's it. So what we have now is every turn you get Greninja into your deck with Super Boost Energy and Froakie. Because when you use the attack, all 3 of those cards go in. And in theory, you have a 0-card deck. You try and get every other card out of your deck so that you can then just every single turn, Froakie and Super Boost Energy and Greninja go in, and every single turn you draw them. And then you play them down with Meganium, attach to Super Boost Energy, and you're attacking for 110. Now this is why we play Looker. We really need to draw 3 cards per turn. Why don't we just play How, you say? And the reason is Looker Whistle. Looker Whistle lets you search your deck for up to 2 cards named Looker, reveal them and put them into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So frankly, it's way more consistent than How, because you can search it out with Looker. Now this still isn't perfect, because of course if you've only got 3 cards in your deck, then you don't have a Looker. So you're not going to have a 0-card deck, but you're going to get as close as you can, because you need this every turn. And that's where Swampert comes in. Yes, you will notice that this is the 3rd of all of these Stage 2s we've been talking about. It's getting a little silly at this stage. So with Swampert, you get to discard a card from your hand, and then you draw 3 cards. Now, again, if you've got a free card deck, that's lovely, but remember that you've got to discard a card from your hand to do this. Now, in theory, that's not a huge problem, because what you do is you build up your hand, and you just keep a whole bunch of cards in hand. Now, if you're keeping a whole bunch of cards in hand, then Marshadow can disrupt you, and Judge can disrupt you. But in theory, you keep cards in hand, so you just discard a random card from your hand, and you draw the free cards in your deck. That's the dream here. You have free cards in your deck, a bunch in your hand, you discard one from your hand, draw the free from your deck, they are the perfect free. Sounds good. And then the other Pokemon we're using here, the other stage 2 is Slacking. I keep telling you no one's playing Slacking, but I also keep telling you that Slacking is the only thing that turns off abilities of non-basic, non-GX Pokemon. Having said that, it also turns off abilities of basic Pokemon, and it also turns off abilities of GX Pokemon. It turns off all of the abilities of your opponent. You still get to keep yours. You still get to keep your Swampert, which incidentally can only be turned off by an opposing Slacking. You still get to keep your Greninja, etc., etc. Your Meganium, because you really need your abilities here. But remember, Meganium and Swampert cannot be turned off, although Greninja can. The free extra damage is nice, but it's not vital. You don't need the free extra damage. And of course, when you shuffle Greninja into your deck, you need something to put up in its place. That is where Slacking comes in. You put Slacking active and all of a sudden your opponent can't use Malamar, your opponent can't use Naganadel, your opponent can't use Decidueye, your opponent can't use Zoroark. I could keep going, but you get the point. And decks like Malamar and Naganadel at the moment are not used to playing without abilities, because the only thing that turns off the ability is Slacking, and no one's playing Slacking. Except you now are. And now that gives you a huge advantage. It's not just that you're turning off their abilities, it's that they're not used to playing without abilities. Now that's most of the combo, well that is really the combo as a whole. So what you do is every turn you put Super Boost Energy on Greninja, shuffle it into your deck after doing 110 damage. Hopefully you've got no other cards in your deck, and then next turn you use Swampert's Power Draw to draw those free cards. Use Meganium's Quick Ripening Herb to play your Greninja down, attach the Super Boost Energy, and then you get Slacking out the active, Greninja in the active, and you're off. Clearly, getting Slacking out of the active is going to be a bit of a problem. It's got a retreat cost of 3, and we no longer have Floatstone. Now, the deck apparently played Switch, and the deck apparently played Ace Roller, which would both work. But if you can't get them, it's going to be awkward to get it out the active. No, you can't use Super Boost Energy. You kind of need that in order to be able to attack. But then again, if you are blocking abilities and slowing the game down, does it matter if your opponent occasionally gets a turn where you're not attacking and they're still ability locked? It doesn't seem like that'd be the worst thing ever here. And look, if it comes down to the end of the game, you can attack with Slacking using Super Boost Energy. But it's got to be the last KO of the game, because when you use it, you discard Super Boost Energy, which goes to the Lost Zone, and then you can't attack. But as a last attack for the game, this will work. But like I say, you can only attack with it once. It is a convoluted plan, to say the least. But I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, when it works, it's essentially unbeatable. Your opponent is ability locked, taking 140 damage per turn, because remember, you still get Greninja's ability, even though it's not the reason you're playing it. And there's very little that they can do at that stage, unless they can knock out Slacking without using abilities, which a lot of decks can't. Now, although I unfortunately do not have a deck list, there are some other cards that we know that they played. And at this stage, shout out to the lovely Code64 for giving me the info that I have on this. We know that they played Acrobike, which makes sense. It's item draw, and it allows you to just set up your deck a little bit faster. We know that they played Nest Ball, which is, of course, needed just to get your basics out. And we know that they played Brooklet Hill because Swampert evolves from a water Pokemon and Greninja evolves from a water Pokemon, so it's nice to be able to get both of them using Brooklet Hill. We know that they played Timeable, which is nice for setting up your evolutions. We know that they played Rescue Stretcher to get their Pokemon back. We know that they played Rare Candy, which obviously they did. There's a lot of Stage 2s here. Some of the more interesting cards they played, though, they played Alolan Ninetales GX. Purely to get up and rolling. I've made this point in videos lately. If you're playing a Stage 2 and you want to be consistent at the moment, you've basically got to play Alolan Ninetales. You don't have much of a choice. It's the only way to get a truly consistent Stage 2 deck at the moment, so essentially suck it up and play a Stage 2. Not to be too blunt about it, but that's essentially your option. And Ace Roller here was basically played to pick this up, because you don't want it on your bench. It's not a Stage 2, and it gives up 2 prizes. If we look at our bench sitters we're using during the game here, we've got Meganium, Stage 2, helps with Super Boost Energy, non-GX. Slacking, Stage 2, need to get it in the active between turns, essentially. And Swampert, Stage 2, helps with Super Boost Energy. It's your draw engine. We don't want a GX on the field here. We know our opponent's occasionally going to KO a Slacking and we're fine with it. And we can play Greninja because it never stays on the field for more than one attack. What we cannot do is have Alolan Ninetales there. So Ace Roller gets it off the board. And then finally Gladion. Now Gladion's a no-brainer. You are playing one energy card. If that energy card is prized, you can't attack, you cannot win the game. So you've got to play Gladion here for if it ends up prized. This is a ridiculous deck, a crazy deck. Japan is going crazy for it. That's what I've been told. Sorry if it sounds a little bit clickbaity, but I promise you it's true. And this is a ridiculous, crazy, unique, broken deck. This is not how the Pokemon TCG is supposed to be played. I've not seen a deck like this before, and I'm willing to bet that you haven't either. So even though Tag Bolt is leaked and we're going through all the cards from that, I could not wait another day to show you this deck. It's that awesome. But now it's time to tell me what you think about this deck. So go nuts in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. Please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? Also, as a side note, obviously, if I have any inkling of a deck list, I'll show you. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWossy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WossyPlays for some more Wossy action. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.